Revenge is a dish best served hot. Find out what's going on as I hereby invite everyone to join me on my adventures through Marvel Snap. Hey everybody, it's Annabelle. So the high voltage event is back. It is currently up. It is currently running, and you can get a brand new car for free by taking advantage of the daily quests that run through the entire event. And if you do so, you will get the card, the first Ghost Rider. The first Ghost Rider lived on Earth as a young boy about 1,000,000 years ago as part of a group of cavemen. At an early age, he realized that he was smarter than the rest of his pack, a fact that he kept to himself out of fear of being isolated. One day, a mysterious man approached the pack and quickly became the leader by violent means, eventually revealing himself to be a Wendigo, and devoured the entire pack, save for the young boy. Before leaving, the man challenged the boy to find him. The first Ghost Rider chose to venture out beyond his cave, convinced that if the stranger could survive, then so could he. Eventually, he grew up in the harsh environment. It was then that he was approached by a snake that then spoke to him. It lied to the man, telling him that it had continued to witness mankind committing countless misdeeds and unjust action, which was infuriating, and that it would fight over such threats if only it had a better body to host and hold all the power it had. The first Ghost Rider was convinced, and the evil spirit took upon the body as a way to achieve a goal that would result in a catastrophe and the human's end. The host, however, acted as a lock preventing the spirit from exacting its full potential as long as it was bound. After the transformation, he decided that he needed a faster way to find his prey and chose a nearby mammoth and finally tracked down the Wendigo to exact his revenge after engaging in an intense fight. The first Ghost Rider is intense. He has sworn many times that he will bring vengeance for the fallen, or vow to drink the enemy's blood. He was also very closed off and a loner until he was approached by Firehair, who asked him to join the prehistoric Avengers, and he fights beside them. But fearing that he will lose his newfound family, he is overprotective of them. He has claimed to them that he would survive the fall, but wonders if he could survive the loneliness again. The first Ghost Rider is imbued with a spirit who has an origin that is mysterious. Each spirit calls themselves the first Ghost Rider, even if more than one are around at the same time, as there have been many different ones around throughout time. Regardless of their mundane origin, their new powers are boundless, making them one of the strongest and most powerful supernatural entities to exist. And they are only limited in what they can do by the host's lack of imagination. The first Ghost Rider is the strongest and most powerful supernatural entity who took upon a weak body, hoping to discard it as a way to achieve a goal. The host, however, acted as a lock preventing the spirit from exacting its full potential. This is represented in Marvel Snap as this card is a strong and powerful entity who discards your weakest body and then is prevented from exacting its full potential that they would have had. So in Marvel Snap, what this card does, it is a 2 cost of 5 power with the description of on reveal. It will discard the lowest power card from your hand, and then it will remove that amount of power from the Ghost Rider's power on the board. Now, a lot of people have talked pretty well about this card, and I don't think it's the worst card around. But but I don't think it's the best card around, and I think it has exactly one home. And because of it only having exactly one home, I put it on being a 2 on the scale of star rating. So let's go over why some of the reasons I think that falls all the way down to a 2. First of all, let's just talk about the deck this is going to go in. The card that this is going to go in, the deck that's going to go in, it's a deck that uses Gore the God Butcher. The card is called Gore the God Butcher. These two cards are going to be married together till the end of time. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to get Gore the God Butcher in your hand. You're supposed to have Gore the God Butcher in your hand. And then on 2, you play down the first Ghost Rider. The first Ghost Rider, unless something really strange and weird happens, it's going to discard your Gore because you probably don't have anything that has -1 power. It's not the cost. It's not whatever's the lowest cost, it's whatever has the lowest power. And then at the end of turn, you're going to bring back it with Hela, and somewhere along the way, you're going to discard Scar. That means at the end of turn, you're bringing back the Gore, which at that point probably has about 4 or 5 or maybe even 7 or 8 on it, depending on what the game has gone around to, and the 12 off of Scar plus the Hela itself. This basically makes it so that it has this home and only this home. Now, what you're supposed to do, and what has also been confirmed, is that the first Ghost Rider will never get plus for discarding a negative card. While I do understand the need for this, because if you had the ability to gain power off of negative cards, you would just play the Hobgoblin in your deck and play this on 2 if you got the Hobgoblin. And if you got the Hobgoblin and got this out of your hand, that would be an additional 8 on top of your card. Which means that on turn 2 you'd have a 12 power card, and that's just ridiculous. But, as far as I'm aware, nothing is preventing this card from going past 0. Not just because of stuff like Scorpion and everything else like that, but by just it triggering itself. Now, the way it works is it basically is the opposite of Cowling Wing, where Cowling Wing would discard the card that costs the least from your hand. This will discard the card that has the least power. It's one less than Cowling Wing, but has that big downside of the fact that it will reduce its power unless you find something with -1, 0, or possibly 1 you can get away with. If you get 1, you'll end up with Cowling Wing. Anything below that, you'll end up worse than Cowling Wing. Which basically means that to a certain degree, unless you're very careful, you end up with almost a worse version of the Lizard. People don't play the Lizard, even with the new buff to the Lizard, because they're afraid of losing all that power if it gets overwhelmed. You are basically putting a card in your deck that, unless you have a very unique situation, you're going to lose as much power, if not more power, than the Lizard. It doesn't take much. Just 2 points of power. And you're below where Silk sits. If somehow, some way you get below 4, which I'm not sure how you would do, you'd be down below where the Lizard will end up. But if you see that the best thing that you got in your hand, or maybe the worst thing that you got in your hand, still has 4 power, just don't play the first Ghost Rider. But that's kind of hard to say when you're wondering about, will I get something better, will I get something worse, do I want to skip turn 2? Now, one of the few things that it is good for and interesting for is, first of all, if you ever have a situation where you got a rock in your hand or some card that you didn't want in your hand. So, most of the cards that you don't want in your hand are either 0 or below 0. Assuming that they got put there from your opponent or from some effect. you can just play the first Ghost Rider, discard it, you get a power point on the board, you turn the negative into a positive. Also, there's something kind of interesting that I want to look at about doing this with kind of the Shadow King, where you let it go low, you don't care what you discard. And maybe you hope to lull your opponent into the fact that that's not going to be a powerful lane that they can go win. And then at the end turn, you play the Shadow King, you wipe out their power point, and you bring your power points back on. Not sure how good that is, how bad that is, but would like to see it. Another card that you might want to throw into this deck, if you do need another card into this deck, would be the Iron Man. Again, the fact is you're trying to discard and bring back with Hela. Because Iron Man is a 0, that will be one of the lowest cards that you have if you don't have the lore. Getting back an Iron Man for free isn't the end of the world. One of the other interesting things in here is, believe it or not, it might be one of the best things to eat on too. Now, there are a few other cards that fall into that eating on 2 category, like the Lizard. But getting a Venom on top of this, or eating this, isn't the worst idea in the world. You just gotta be careful that you're not discarding something that makes even eating this with a Venom be a problem, which is kind of a catch-22 that you gotta be careful of. Another thing that you always gotta be careful of, anything that says on reveal, you gotta be careful of Cosmo and Cosmo-like effects and Wong-like effects. I am still waiting for the day when somebody will get angry at this card because they play it on a Wong or a Wong-like effect, and it triggers twice and discards them 2 cards and makes this card go into the negatives most likely. The way I see it, it kind of works like a Silver Samurai. It has the downside that your opponent can't discard a card, which might be an upside, but might be a downside, because usually what you're doing with a Silver Samurai, or what you're trying to get off a Silver Samurai, is to follow up with the stature after this. But it also comes down about 2 energy earlier, or can be slid in on the 2 energy instead of the 4 energy. It has the same exact power spec behind it if you get something good. Another thing that kind of annoys me about the first Ghost Rider is just how it does work with Hela. One of the problems, designs, spaces of the original Hela was that the reason she had a decently good power for just how much she was in power and had a decently good effect was she had an issue, a chance, more than likely ability of getting thrown out of your hand before turn 6. When this card originally came around and you were playing the Hela deck, you had to be very careful, and you'd lose some games just because you drew the Hela. Over how Hela has been rewritten and changed and moved up and moved down, more and more cards that have been put into the Hela deck have made it so that you can't hit Hela. Stuff like Blade used to be able to hit Hela, and Swordmaster used to be able to hit Hela. Now, it's good that there are cards that can't hit Hela, but this is almost making it to the point where you can make a discard deck that has absolutely no way of discarding Hela, and still have a decently good amount of stuff that gets discarded. And part of it might just have to do with Scar being moved up to 7, but even before then, you could kind of get away with that with Death. And it kind of makes Hela this weird card, because she should have a downside. And right now, I'm not seeing where the downside is, except you have to own some decently expensive cards to make it work. And you're not that many decently expensive cards. You're basically talking about Gore, and you're basically talking about Scar. Other than that, you can make the deck pretty on the cheap. You get the first Ghost Rider, you get Lady Sif, maybe you even throw Death in there. You don't want to go super heavy. And basically on turn 6, you just unload with the Hella and get your 2-3 good cards out of there, and you might surprise win. So, I get why this is a good card. I'm just not sure if you could ever, and I mean ever, play this card without owning Gore the God Butcher. Every other card that I look at for this card is kind of like, haha, that's kind of funny. You're stuck after this point if you don't have the Gore God Butcher with stuff like the Hood and Green Goblin and Hobgoblin. And while those cards are fine, you really don't want to bring back Green Goblin or Hobgoblin or even the Hood with Hella, because they might not fall where you need to do, or your opponent might have too many clogged up spaces where they'll do you good. So, I see where it's a good card. I see where it exists in discard. But if you don't have the Gore or the God Butcher, I'm not sure you can play this. And there's absolutely positively no deck that is going to play this that isn't running Hella. If you see the first Ghost Rider, you know you're playing a Hella deck. And if you put a Ghost Rider in your deck and you're not playing Hella, you either are 500 IQ or you're just playing it to get some sort of quest done, or you're doing it for the memes. Anyways, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, remember, play for fun.